to this webinar on AI in the energy sector. Very happy to have you all here today, and more are joining. So we have overall 30 participants registered, even 36 I heard earlier, from different countries: Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, Spain, Italy, Ireland, Portugal, the Netherlands, and even India, and representatives from cities, associations of cities, energy agencies, ministries, universities, investors, and businesses. So it is very, very nice to have such a diverse crowd here today to listen and contribute to the discussion, because it's going to be interactive on this topic. Before we begin, I maybe introduce myself. My name is Luigi Lopiparo. I am a partner at Technopolis Group in the Brussels office, which is one of the companies implementing on behalf of the European Commission this Smart Cities Marketplace, where I am also the coordinator of the matchmaking activities. So basically, with my team, that includes Shazad Jameson and Marta Fiorillo, that you will see in a moment, and also with Luisa, that is supporting the logistics of the event. We have organized this for you. We are also going to introduce for you the experiences of several stakeholders. Shazad will do the honors later. And we have until 5:30. Please keep your mics off and cameras off during the presentations. You can, during the presentations at any time, use the functionality of the chat to ask queries. We will answer to you also in the background or in the Q&A session. And then when we arrive at the moment where we open the floor, you can obviously raise your hand and have your moment to ask questions, share experiences. Always, please, when you do, put your camera on if possible, and your microphone, and say your name and your organization of belonging and country, so it is easier for the persons to whom you are addressing the questions to give you a precise answer. I think I already said that the event is going to be registered for dissemination purposes, and I think that's all, but I wish you a very nice day on this event. I give the floor now to my colleague Shazad, who is going to moderate the webinar. Please, Shazad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luigi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shaz Jameson. I'm a senior consultant at Technopolis Group, working together with Luigi and Marta, and I will be your facilitator for today. We're delighted to have you join us on this webinar on AI in the energy sector from the Smart Cities Marketplace. We have really, perfect, thank you. We have an illustrious panel today, starting with Michael Mulkin. He's the MIMS ambassador for Open and Agile Smart Cities, with a long history of developing and implementing socially inclusive, area-based ICT strategies. We have Wart Steeman, who's the project manager IT and Smart Cities at the West-Vlaams Intercommunale, which is an association of municipalities in West Flanders in Belgium. We then have Bart Vuijk, who is Senior International Business Development Manager at TNO, focusing on smart mobility and smart cities. And he's also one of the team leaders of the urban strategy in Amsterdam. And finally, we will have Casper de Jong, who is a program manager, mobility and transitions at the Dutch Ministry for Infrastructure and Waterworks. And he's also leading the Dutch Metropolitan Innovations Project. So lots to look forward to. As Luigi said, feel free to pose your questions in the chat, after which we'll have a panel discussion and space for Q&A. But before that, I have the pleasure of introducing Marta Fiorillo, who is a green economy specialist at Technopolis Group with a specialization in European policy. Marta, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Shaz, and hello to everyone. So I'll be briefly presenting the Smart Cities Marketplace initiative. So before we dive in, just a brief overview of the EU Green Deal, which kind of sets the context for this initiative. So as I'm sure you all know, the EU Green Deal aims to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. This involves binding climate targets, substantial investments, and a commitment to ensuring a just transition for all. So the problem here is that companies and cities, although they are adapting to reduce climate risk, the pace and scale of this change needs to significantly increase. And this is the EU's concrete problem that the Smart Cities Marketplace seeks to address. So to accelerate the pace of the green transition, the Smart Cities Marketplace focuses on cities. So why cities? Although they make up only 4% of the EU's total land area, they surprisingly accommodate for 75% of its citizens. And they are substantial energy consumers and polluters. So cities consume over 65% of the world's energy, and they account for more than 70% of global CO2 emissions, according to OECD and European Commission sources. So the takeaway here is that although cities account for a lot of pollution, this also means that it's where solutions are most likely to be located. And therefore, Smart Cities Marketplace is designed to aid the transition of cities. So what are the main barriers to climate neutrality? According to a city we carried out of over 100 city representatives, some 65% of respondents indicated that lack of funding and financing schemes pose a significant challenge. And so here financing is important because if we were only to have funding, so grants instead of loans, there wouldn't be enough financial resources for all European cities to try to implement changes to meet Green Deal targets. So although funding and financing is one of the main barriers, some other barriers include lack of human resources or skills, lack of knowledge about the right solutions to implement, fragmentation of responsibilities among different stakeholders. This is also another major problem because of fragmentation of responsibility can complicate decision making and coordination. So, for instance, maybe a city representative may know what kind of what kind of strategy they'd like to implement at the city level, but may struggle to procure financial resources at the regional or national level. So this plays into one of the other barriers, which is disconnected strategies for actions and a lack of cooperation with the private sector. So these are all barriers to climate neutrality that cities face that Smart Cities Marketplace aims to address by the services it offers. So the Smart Cities Marketplace is actually a complementary initiative that makes up the Smart City universe offered by the European Commission. So each initiative within this universe addresses a specific city need or focuses on sector-specific solutions. So the Smart Cities Marketplace serves as a hub for collaboration and innovation, and it's specifically geared towards sustainable development in the areas of clean energy, so buildings and energy, sustainable mobility, and digital tools to support the transition towards net zero. So for today's webinar, the topic is obviously AI and the energy system, so we'll focus on the last thematic area. So why Smart Cities Marketplace? Well, the initiative aims to guide and inform local EU communities, especially those that are small to mid-sized cities, by providing valuable information and practical support to these small and mid-sized cities, helping them to navigate their climate transition. One of the key roles the initiative plays is to accelerate the process of identifying, replicating, and scaling up smart city projects. And ultimately, the goal is to empower communities to replicate existing solutions. So what are the key components of the Smart Cities Marketplace? Some of these components are a repository of EU climate neutral and smart city projects, a hub for project development, a forum for knowledge exchange, and a matchmaking process for investment in sustainable projects. And so if you're looking for investors specifically, the Smart Cities Marketplace includes an expanding network of about 19 investors dedicated to promoting innovation and sustainability in the 3 areas that were highlighted. And these investors and facilitators are actively seeking smart city projects to support. Here are about 15 of them. So just some statistics about the project so far. So the Smart Cities Marketplace has received over 130 bankable project proposals to date. And these projects are worth about 670 million euros. So this demonstrates the impact and potential of the Smart Cities Marketplace. So more specifically, what type of support do we provide? So Smart Cities Marketplace can help cities power to accelerate project implementation. We help with free of charge technical assistance. We help cities gain facilitated access to funding opportunities, and we organize networking sessions to help different stakeholders meet and share knowledge. And finally, cities will, of course, have the opportunity to meet investors in investor meetings facilitated by our teams with the goal of securing funding and financing for projects. So more specifically, we offer a range of services designed to do this for small to medium-sized cities. So the way we help is through matchmaking events that gather cities, consortia, and investors. Financing masterclasses, which provide hands-on guidance on different project ideas, thematic webinars such as this one, one-to-one consultancy services with a tailored team of experts, peer-to-peer exchanges, and last but not least, deal meetings with investors to explore different avenues to secure funds and financing for mature solutions. So cities, city-led consortia, businesses, small and medium enterprises, project developers, investors, all these stakeholders are encouraged to apply to Smart Cities Marketplace. Although for consortia members or for consortias, applicants must possess at least one formal endorsement letter from a city. But if you would like to know more, please scan the QR code on the slide. And you can always visit our website for more comprehensive information. So that's it on my end. Thank you for listening, and back to Shaz.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much, Martha. It's really great to hear how the Smart Cities Marketplace is supporting consortia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure. Okay, up next, I would like to invite Michael to share his slides. I have the pleasure of introducing Michael Mulquin. And if I understand correctly, you will also be speaking to part of the challenge that Marta laid out around fragmentation of responsibilities and disconnected strategies. But please, Michael, take it away.
Thank you so much. Let me spend a few moments getting my slides up so that it could be full screen. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you. I'm, as it says, I'm the MIMS ambassador, which is a very glorious title. MIMS are minimal interoperability mechanisms, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about how minimal interoperability can actually play a very practical role in managing energy in smart cities. So can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Full screen, brilliant. So what we're going to be looking at, really focusing on, is positive energy districts as a kind of a great example of how AI is an important part of this whole process. Now, we've already said, if you're wanting to tackle energy and make sure that we manage our energy much more responsibly so that we can really tackle the climate crisis, then cities, as we've seen all the statistics, cities are key to that. And one emerging concept as a way of helping to move forward more quickly is the idea of positive energy districts. And really what that's about is, rather than trying to tackle a whole city all at once, you take one district of that city or a smaller set of population, and you deal with that using a whole system approach. You look at all the different things that impact on energy use in that city, and you see how you can manage all of them together in an effective way, not only to reduce the carbon footprint and energy use, but not even only to move towards net zero, but actually, if possible, having as a target of becoming a district that actually is a net producer of energy and can share the energy that's produced with other districts to really help lead the city in its journey towards the net zero as a whole. So that's what positive energy districts are about. It's an energy efficient and flexible urban area with net zero energy import and greenhouse gas emissions, aiming towards annual local surplus of renewable energy. And the key point I want to make out of this is that taking the words in bold in the second definition, that positive energy districts, they require integration of different systems and infrastructures and interactions between buildings, the users, and the regional energy mobility and ICT systems. So the only way that you can make a district net zero or a positive energy district is by enabling all the many different systems in that area, the infrastructure, the way that energy is generated, the way that energy is used, looking at even things like the transport system around that district, the way that people are able to become more responsible in the way they use energy, and all of these many different aspects, they all have to be looked at together. So just a quick, there are many stakeholders. You're not going to do it by just having government involved or industry involved or the citizen involved. We're not asking the citizen, you make responsible choices and let government and industry off the hook. It has to be the only way to make this work. The only way to achieve net zero or a positive energy district is by every type of stakeholder in that district working together. That's a big challenge. A quick one example, we're not just talking obviously about cities here. There's an island in Finland where they've seen that as a key goal, and they're working towards becoming a positive energy island. Many of such cases there are. It's not just Europe. Even though Europe is aiming to have at least 100 positive energy districts over the next few years to really get things moving, all over the world, you've got examples where governments, where local authorities, where industry are working together to establish this kind of a sustainable area where all the different systems that make that area work are working together to deliver net zero. And so what you've got is all sorts of things working together. You've got obviously the physical energy network, where you're looking at generation of energy, storage of energy, distribution of energy. You've got the ICT backbone that's sharing information and data around. You've got user interactions where you're able to provide information not only to the human in the home, but also the building itself to all the devices to make sure that the way that energy is being used in the building is managed well, the public spaces, public lighting, all of those things, electric vehicles, all of these things need to interact with this whole system. It's internet driven. It's bringing all sorts of information together to enable a greater value. But the key thing about it is it's AI enabled. What you're doing is, when you're looking at such a huge challenge, it's something that can't be managed just with our single person's knowledge and understanding. You're bringing all that data together. You need to be able to understand patterns. You need to be able to model if that happens, then what might be the consequence. You need to see, okay, we think this is a good proposal. Let's do it. Let's manage it. How far is it meeting our projections? What do we need to change about it to improve things even further? So you're going to need lots of analytics, lots of modeling. On top of that data, you're going to need to use digital twin technology, city information modeling, all of these things to be able to understand what your data is telling you about how best to manage that district to enable effective net zero and above. So Open and Agile Smart Cities, we're a city network, not for profit. We're a network of networks, so we work with 168 cities around the world at the moment, all of whom are parts of other networks, because what we're interested in is cities that are already working together with other cities to learn from each other and to move forward. And what we're trying to do is to bring together the knowledge from all of those different cities to help each city improve and benefit from the growing knowledge that we've got. And one of the key things that we're developing are the minimal interoperability mechanisms, which are simple, practical tools to enable cities to move forward. We're involved in a couple of positive energy district projects. BIPED, which is looking at intelligent positive energy districts. We're looking at Expedite, which is enabling positive energy districts through digital twins. And as you can see, both of these are focusing or understand that the only way to make this work is to be able to bring the huge amounts of data together, but then to be able to model it, to develop not only 3D models, but analytics to help you understand what's going on and make better decisions. So the challenge in all of this, as we've said, there are many different systems and subsystems that go to make a positive energy district work. All of these systems already are generating lots of data. All of these systems interact with each other. And what the key challenge is, how can we best bring all of that data together so that we can understand better what's happening in the city, so in the positive energy district, so that we can make the right decisions to manage things better. But this is difficult because all of these services that are systems that are happening in the in that district are managed by many different organizations. It's not one single organization that covers everything, but there are many different organizations, government agencies, private companies, not-for-profit organizations that are generating that data to manage their particular part of that district. And some of these agencies are big and well-resourced with large IT departments, but others are much smaller, still important, but do not have the resources to be able to manage data necessarily in the most effective ways. But whatever happens, we can say that all of them will be managing data somewhat differently to each other. They'll all have their own processes that have grown up maybe over many years in the way that they handle and collect the data that they've got. And of course, the challenge is how to get all of this data that's been generated by many different agencies, how to get that to be shared in a solid, effective data ecosystem so that there can be confidence that that data is being handled effectively and providing the insights using AI that we need to move forward. So standards organizations are really important. Standards organizations are working very hard to identify what sort of requirements are needed to enable interoperability between different organizations and the way they handle data. If all cities, city service providers in that positive energy district followed the same set of detailed standards, there wouldn't be a problem. But of course, that's not true. Different standards organizations make standards that don't necessarily work or are compatible with standards from others. They can also be very complicated and difficult to implement, especially for small organizations. And there is some valuable data that's generated using proprietary systems from the large companies such as Schneider's, Siemens, and so on, that develop industrial scale building management systems, facility management systems, traffic management systems, and they use their own particular ways of handling the data. And then, of course, as they said, the data has been handled and used by many different organizations with their own ways of handling it. Now, what's important, therefore, to understand is that interoperability is not an all or nothing situation. What the ideal is you have a plug and play standard that everybody follows, and that means you just link things together and they will work easy. But it's not just the choice between that and having no common standard where you've got to work really hard and spend lots of time and effort to integrate data coming from those different systems. There's ways that you can identify intermediate steps that can help to align the way that data is being managed so that you're not expecting people to immediately change to another way of doing things, but you're helping them to slowly, step by step, move towards making the data more and more easy to integrate within the positive energy district. And that's what we're looking for
Michael,
here. Yep.
You've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes, perfect. So we're looking for ways that we can bring that data together with minimal user intervention so that it's as easy as possible to handle it well. And that's why we've developed the MIMs, which are mechanisms that cities can use to start by ensuring that everybody at least can align that the way they handle and share data using these mechanisms. They are built on standards. They take the key requirements of standards, the key basic requirements to give organizations that are working together in a positive energy district not only a first good step to get them started, but to ensure that the way data is handled is aligned through all these different organizations. We're working on 10 at the moment. One of them on a MIM 5 is about actually helping to ensure that the AI that we use is fair and transparent. And we know that there's going to be other MIMs later. And it's a very simple way we work. We identify an objective. We think about what capabilities are needed by that organization to enable that objective to be met. We translate those capabilities into technical requirements, and then we look at what different options there are for meeting those technical requirements, and then we can identify how to enable as good as possible interoperability between them. So that's the minimum interoperability mechanisms. We're working within these different projects, as I've said, to see how we can continue to refine the MIMs to help enable easy sharing of data to support all the modeling and analytics that AI can do to help make sure that we move step by step towards net zero and beyond. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. I see there's a question in the chat just in terms of logistics about whether the slides will be shared in webinar, but I know that the webinar is being recorded and that will be shared afterwards. Michael, it's really great to hear the presentation on the positive energy districts, and particularly the kind of whole system approach, and that you really identified all the different collaboration between humans, organizations, and also the different technical levels, and that transition requires different degrees and steps to get there. So it's a nice story of the journey of going towards this direction. I now have the pleasure of introducing Wart Steeman from the West-Vlaamse Intercommunale. Wart, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Am I now sharing my first slide?
You are.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, hello everybody. My name is Wart Steeman. Thank you for the introduction. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about a product that we managed today at WVI at the West-Vlaams Centre Communale, but also about a project that we are now launching very soon. Okay, yeah, maybe first about the company I'm working for. As you mentioned, Chazat, the West-Vlaamse Intercommunale. We are an intermunicipal company located in Bruges also, and we support 54, unless they merge, of course, but more or less 54 municipal governments. We do that by providing services, standalone services or shared services. And we do also shared investments to support them. So generally, we support them in their transition towards a more sustainable a sustainable city, but also clean energy, mobility, housing, and entrepreneurship. There's 3 main cities here in this area, let's say. It's Bruges, Ostend, and Roeselare. They also have their own smart city approach projects and strategy. We also have a lot of rural areas that we need to support. So that is important when we think about our smart city approach. But we have a smart city approach, meaning that we believe that data and combining data can help local governments to support their policy. Whether this is static data or dynamic data driven by IoT, that doesn't really matter. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the product Thermocar first, before I move on to the AI part of it. So what is it? We started in 2018 with the first project, and then year after year, we built it up, we improved the solution a little bit. But when we started, we had 1 car and 1 camera. We had our own navigation system. And what we do is we drive through the streets in the cities that ask us to do that. During wintertime, it needs to be cold outside and warm inside. So we start driving at 10 o'clock in the evening and we stop at 2, 3 o'clock in the night. Why is that? It's because we take thermographic pictures and we need to see through the thermographic picture, we need to see the energy leaks in the houses. So we started with 1 car. Now we already have 2 cars. We have 2 cameras mounted on the car, so we can now shoot left and right, left side of the street and right side of the street at the same time, which improves our operational efficiency, which then again could lower the cost of our photo per citizen, let's say. That is also always the goal. Okay, so yeah, as you can see on the top of the presentation here, we have a drive-by solution, meaning that we are not working with a standalone camera and a standalone perspective. We do not position ourselves in front of the house for the ideal picture, but we take a picture every second or half a second. So every house is multiple times, or every house is yeah, again, correct, is available on different pictures. And that's important when we think about the AI solution for this. So the result of what we do is that we have a picture and we interpret the picture from a isolation perspective, an energy leak perspective, or a renovation perspective. You can call it in different ways. And we actually show that picture to the citizens, to the civilians of a city or in the area that we're working. First, citizens are invited in, let's say, a bigger information session. And if they're interested to see the picture of their house, there is a separate meeting with an official or with an employee on our side that explains them what is going on with their house, what they could do to renovate as a first step, as a second step, etc. The nice thing about this is that we are actually triggering citizens by showing them the picture of their house. So it's a very strong tool to do this. It's also a smart city project, you could say, where the citizens are directly impacted or directly involved. So that is really the nice thing, or one of the nice things about this project. So remember, it's an ad hoc It's an ad hoc invitation on request of the citizen, organized by the city or by ourselves. So that also means that we cannot guarantee that every citizen looks at the picture of his or her house. So, and that's when this new project term AI steps in. So it's the next step, let's say, to improve our products. And it's sponsored by European. It's European sponsorship through Vlaio. Vlaio is a Flemish agency for innovation and entrepreneurship. So they sponsor this project, and our project partner here is Bruges, still the most beautiful city in Europe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, what is the goal? You can maybe, you can guess a little bit where I'm going to, but with AI, we try to switch from a manual interpretation, an official looking at a picture and interpreting the picture before he hands over the information to the civilian, to a more automatic approach. And by using AI, we want to accomplish that. So the pictures, they need to be interpreted automatically. And as a result, we can, of course, reach more people. That is really the holy grail. If we do it like this, or if we could do it like that and present it also in a digital way. You have platforms where citizens could authenticate themselves and then look at their house in the whole of Flanders, let's say, at the end. That would be the holy grail and what we're actually maybe will end up with. Also, now we're looking at individual houses. If you have the data of all the houses combined together, we can also not only look at or direct ourselves to the house owners, but we could also involve the local governments when they prioritize neighborhoods. So that is a different level of looking at things. So it's a more aggregated level. That is also one thing that we try to achieve here. And also, this data, it can be used because this solution, let's say, is part of a bigger story where you have, let's say, an ecosystem of information about a city. This is just part of it, but it can be used as part of this economical or financial analysis, trying to achieve the climate objectives. Okay. So this is already my last slide because I only have 10 minutes, I understand. When we started up this project, we were really positive because I must say we are not AI technicians. We are not an IT company. So of course the idea of achieving this was, we were very optimistic about it. But we have not awarded the contract to any external supplier. But what we can already see is that there are a lot of challenges that we have to take. And there's just some of them that I highlighted here. For example, we have the quality of the pictures. This is, let's say, a project, computer vision related project. We definitely need to look at the quality of the pictures and do some noise reduction, there are different techniques, playing with the contrast and so on, normalization techniques. We definitely have to do that. Also the camera. And I think this project really highlights this, that the combination of hardware and software is crucial. Yes, we have good cameras, maybe 10,000 euro per piece. That's quite a lot of money. But you also have cameras where you have no calibration issues that we need to fix afterwards, but they cost maybe 100,000 euro. So definitely the hardware, the quality of the pictures, that is playing a role here, and that these were challenges that we need to overcome before we move on to the interpretation, the real interpretation of the image. Also the image selection. As I've shown you that a house was in the first picture, part of the house was on it, 1/2 a second later. Another part of the house is visible, then you have the complete house, then you have another part. So we need to, let's say, stitch those pictures together. If you would have taken the pictures with a handheld camera, you don't have a stitching issue. Here we have that. We need to create a database and add the data together with some open data provided by the Flemish government to really identify what is a house. Maybe we can use Google Maps data to enrich it a little bit, although Google does not permit us to do so. and so on. Also, so that these are all steps we need to take before the actual interpretation. Also, the segmentation. There's a lot of techniques, computer vision techniques, AI techniques that you can use here in this project. So then you have the image interpretation. That would be our final result. Let's say if we can skip the manual interpretation and do it automatically, that's what we try to achieve. Then we also have to integrate it, of course, in an ecosystem or on a website or whatsoever. So those are the things we now realize just before we award the contract to a supplier. We're very close now, but these are the challenges we face. And then last but not least, something that we definitely underestimated from the beginning is the runtime costs. So if you set up an infrastructure to run this kind of operations, you definitely need to think about the cost for AI. So voila, if you have any questions, feel free to add some chats right now or send me an email afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bart. It's really delightful to hear this concrete experience of not only one project with the thermal car where you drove in the dark in order to see better, but yeah, but how it then connected and linked up with another project to not just connect with the citizen, but then develop automation techniques to do that at scale and perhaps at different, neighborhood levels, and also how you identified, very rightly so, some of the very concrete technical challenges around what does it mean to do quality AI, and that's often underestimated in a lot of these projects, kind of this really technical level. So thank you very much. I'm sure we will have some questions afterwards. For now, I'd like to move. Yeah, for now, I'd like to move to our next speaker, Bart Buik, who will speak to us about the urban strategy in Amsterdam. Bart, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Let me share my screen first, and please confirm that it can be seen.
It can be seen.
Awesome, thank you. So hi, good afternoon. My name is Bart. I'm with TNO and responsible for international partnerships, amongst others. And today I wanted to share with you a little bit of the latest innovations that we are doing at TNO. TNO is the largest Dutch applied research organization, and we're working intensely on the realm of smart cities, sustainable cities, and really try to make them livable and resilient, which is the name of our program. So I'm going to talk about urban strategy, and I'll explain in a while why we have called it that name. First of all, many of you will recognize that today's cities are getting increasingly, let's say, challenging questions. Like, what is happening to our population? They're aging. Pollution and decarbonization are hot topics these days. Heat itself is a hot topic these days. There are changes in mobility and accessibility, but also topics like inclusion and crime. They all get together on a city level, and they all are intertwined. They're all connected, and as such, a city could be compared to a complex organism where things really are interconnected. And the point with these cities being so complex is that it actually hampers the way decisions are made. The complexity actually means that time is an issue, is becoming an issue, but at first it is getting very difficult to get an integral picture of what is happening altogether in the city. Many cities, many organizations, not just cities, are organized in silos that have their own specialities and actually create their own solutions and create their own policies. However, it is getting increasingly difficult to make decisions that really lead to the overall best solution. And what is adding to that is that the time to come to a good decision is also increasing. And that may actually lead to people that are maybe not so happy with what is happening in the city. So the quality of decisions is actually impacting how city life is being perceived. And why is this important? It is important because we're talking about people, and at the same time, we're also talking about a lot of money that's being involved, because cities invest heavily in their infrastructure, whether it's for mobility, whether it's for energy, and we're easily talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions, of euros that are involved. So improving that process is valuable in many aspects. And this is one of the reasons why TNO has focused on making this complexity manageable. And this is why we have developed a software application and a software platform that's called Urban Strategy, that actually helps cities to manage that complexity by offering one shared view to the many stakeholders that may be involved in policy making. That actually helps cities to look at these complex topics at a cross-domain approach. So not just looking at the silos, not just looking at the individual domains that are relevant, but really looking at the integral picture, which actually helps cities to make decisions. And one of the things that we focused on in addition to that is not just connecting the different domains, but connecting domains usually means increasing complexity also on a technical level. And we have dealt with that part by radically changing the way we do simulations and we do predictions. And one of the design principles for this whole approach is it should be interactive, meaning you can really make your decisions interactively and see what the effects of policies are in a matter of seconds or minutes versus days to weeks, which ultimately should lead to better decisions, more balanced decisions, decisions that make people happy in the cities. So urban strategy ultimately is what we call a predictive digital twin. And the reason that we add the word predictive is there's lots of different definitions about digital twins. What we think is relevant here is that digital twins, as we see them, are a merger or a combination of both data, which cities have amply, I would say, visualization. And so far, actually, this is what many digital twins mean. But what we're adding to that is the analytics part, the part that actually helps to predict what is happening if you are going to intervene in the city. And if you want to do that, you need to tie these three topics together by an integration framework that is capable of exchanging on an extremely fast level and advanced level the data that is necessary between those three. So what does that look like in reality? Well, these are kind of pictures that of situations that show you how urban strategy, how a predictive digital twin is being used in reality. And actually, we're currently supporting quite a few cities all over the world with this new technology, connecting all these different domains and helping these stakeholders to jointly look at a complex situation from different angles. So for instance, in the bottom left corner, what you see is 6 different ministries in Singapore with the representatives all looking, from their own angle, of course, and from their own policy domain to the same topic. Now, just to give you a glimpse of what kind of domains are we talking about, and today I know is about energy, but actually the challenges in the cities when it comes to sustainability are even wider than that. So our approach is actually on purpose is as wide as you can see it here, and it's even our intention to increase the domains that we're adding onto this platform. So what you see here is we can handle all kinds of mobility demands, including electric mobility. We're looking at resilience of networks, starting with mobility networks, but actually we're venturing into energy networks as well. We're looking at livability aspects of air and noise, and not unimportant, we're also taking a close look at an ever closer look to the well-being implications of policy decisions. What if I make a change, let's say, if I design a zero emission zone, how does that impact lower or middle income people in the city? Can they still access their job that they're dependent on? Well, those are important questions that city managers and a lot of government people actually are asking us and are being asked. So just to give you a glimpse of a number of implementations that we did based on this platform, an interesting one is maybe the transformation of the diesel bus fleet in Singapore, where they have 6,000 buses currently and wanted to design a strategy that actually helps them to convert that system to a zero emission system while still being able to to match the power grid conditions, and of course meet the transportation requirements that are underlying the system. A very non-trivial question, but well, for 6 buses it may be trivial, and maybe for 60, but for 6,000 it's getting really something else. And so with these are projects that all show you how the connected different domains can be actually tied together and be handled in a very unified way. And the way what I'd like to tell the story as well is what we are doing is actually creating a common language for different stakeholders that may be coming from entirely different domains, but they're creating a common language, also a common visual language, to really look at the decisions that need to be made. So what does that mean in reality? We do have an implementation in Amsterdam that's currently running for probably about 6-7 years, mainly geared towards mobility from the get-go, but actually we're venturing into new areas, many of which I already mentioned in my previous slide. But if you look at the practical implications, it actually means that we can help to move from single domain decisions to integrated decisions, that we can help a city to run many scenarios, like dozens of scenarios in an afternoon versus one single scenario in a day, is that we can help them to get away from only paper reports to instantaneous 3D results that they can generate themselves. And I think most importantly, very important to these cities, is that what they see is that by combining the different silos, the different policy domains, it actually helps them to make better decisions across the board. So this is how technology and next level technology, because a lot of actually AI related technology is underlying this platform, but I did not want to bother you too much with the technology itself. I think it's important to understand how technology and how this next level of technology is really opening new perspectives for decision makers across the board. So why are
you
we
have
doing this?
2 minutes.
I need 2 seconds only.
Great.
So this is my last slide. Why a digital twin, a predictive digital twin, can really be helpful. It supports strategic thinking. It's a key success factor in making multi-domain decisions, and it has a huge potential for cities to enhance the way they make their decisions. And this is my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bart. I was just a little early, but the timing was right
No
on
worries.
point. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's really nice also to see that another one of the collaborations and connections that comes out very strongly from your presentation is from multi-domains and multi-sectors. And that's really one of the strengths of looking at AI and energy, but even energy questions are also deeply embedded in mobility in the city. So much appreciated. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Casper de Jong, Program Manager for Mobility and Transport at the Dutch Ministry for Infrastructure and Waterworks. Casper, I believe we are showing your slides. Is that correct?
Hear me?
Oh, I'm not sure if I can hear you.
Right again?
Yes, there we go.
Yep.
Now I can hear you.
Oh,
fantastic.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I hope you're still focused on what we're telling you, and I'm going to pick it up where Bart left off, because TNO and urban strategy is an integral part of this ecosystem that we're structuring in the Netherlands. And DMI stands for Dutch Metropolitan Innovations. And well, we started out maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. Could I have the next slide, please? From the analysis that we as national government, as national ministries, we're overloading our cities with different programs, with all sorts of conflicting principles. And we ourselves, we have over the hundreds of separate agreements with municipalities. When you look at it from the standpoint of the participating cities, our 40 mid-sized cities, we analyzed their efforts in smart city, and we identified over 440 pilots and realized that was probably half of what was currently going on. And none of those pilots were scaled. None were part of the future policy making. So that was something that we really realized this is not the way to go forward, especially if we want to reduce CO2 levels with 55% by 2030. We need to add 900,000 new homes in the Netherlands. We need to cut nitrogen emissions with 50% and a whole lot of other big goals for the next coming years. Can I have the next slide, please? So basically, we thought we want to combine everything that is smart and usually is being organized through several projects or programs: smart mobility, smart housing, smart energy, smart logistics, smart what have you, into one big ecosystem where all participants, and currently that's 4 ministries, dozens of cities, and even more private entities can work together, because these themes, these subjects are all interconnected. So what are we going to use as levers? The maximum utilization of information technology, policy coordination, because that is not a natural given between national, regional, and local governments. You need to structure and organize a public-private partnership, and it is knowledge, really structuring the available knowledge and bringing it to the people who have the questions of how to move forward. Could I have the next, please? So if you want to go beyond the level of the individual pilots in individual cities, we use a horizontal approach to make it really scalable. Between those different layers, coming up with new open interfaces, so that new companies, new entities, and also the wide variety of municipalities can really, from their own standpoint, independent of their own vendors and IT backends, operate in this ecosystem. Could I have the next, please? Now, welcome to the world of federated data sharing, where we keep data at the source and not being transported to national silos. But you need to structure that in a set of collective agreements. And a few of those are represented on this slide. I won't go into them, but if you want to have a fully functioning ecosystem in the physical domain, from the project developers to the transport operators and the traffic industry, the city makers, well, you need to have a set of agreements in place. And you have to monitor progress. If we want to become really sustainable, then you have to measure our progress over the next 5 to 10 years at least. Can I have the next, please? So we're really diving into information technology, and I think that Bart and previous speakers have touched on that. And this is the way that we want to manage that, because scalability, interoperability are, of course, for us to reach those big goals in the Netherlands, both on a local and a national level. Those are key factors, but also, especially when you look at AI, ethics, privacy, and data protection, and also on a very much basic level, the affordability for the end users, for public entities, but also for the business community. Go to the next, please. Now, going into energy, combining with mobility and housing, I just want to touch upon the different levels of scale that policy is being made and demand for energy is being influenced, and also where the supply side of energy is being influenced. And this is just one example, but I could easily give you another 30 cities in the Netherlands. It's all structured in the same way. Within that inner city, with a new development, of course, you want to reach net zero, so it's not fueled by natural gas. It needs to be electrified, but also the slow but rapid increase when it comes to battery electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure. Next, please. When you zoom out, you see that that city is part of a region where there are many other factors influencing the way companies and individual consumers and citizens behave, and how goods and people are being transported between different cities in the same region, and also how energy grids and energy generation is being managed and being devised over several policy-making years and organizations. Next, please. And when you even zoom out some further, when you look at a province, let alone on a national scale, you see that all sorts of new factors come into the picture, from spatial planning to road planning, road safety, environmental issues. So you see that when you start looking at one city or part of a city and combine it with the region and the province level and the national level, you need to align several factors, and you need the tooling that Bart described, urban strategy, to really get a grip on all the factors that you need to have in place to come up with new solutions geared towards that massive reduction in energy consumption and the transition to green and renewable sources. Could I have the next, please? And when you zoom in, as I said, we need to come up with 900,000 new homes in the Netherlands over the next 6 years. Yes, we would all like to have them generate their own energy. We need to regulate that and adjust the building code. But how do you monitor this? And what is the actual consumption of those homes? What is the production from each individual home, and on the level of parts of the city or even an entire city? That is very data intensive. And there you need to have a set of cooperation and agreements in place that you can access that data based on trust, based on agreements, to really come up with the analysis and the tooling to come up with new answers, because it's not just the homes needing new electricity, it's also the vehicles, both for the consumers and also for all sorts of logistical processes. Could I have the next slide, please? And just in the Netherlands, we're investing over 800 million in new hubs. That sometimes you think that it's a new magic wand to solve all the problems in society, but it is a massive investment program. But it's not just building for 800 million new hubs. You also want to make sure that it is used to the maximum of their capabilities, and that it has a positive impact on the surrounding city. Then you also need to plan the energy demand, the assets that are being used, the charging that is needed at any given time, combining with the production, as I showed previously. It's not just producing on one location. We have a massive problem in our energy grids, running to full capacity. And now you need to prioritize the charging infrastructure for vehicles over the homes, or vice versa. And like Bart showed, these are interconnected problems that you need to manage as a whole. And of course, there are new technologies, vehicle to grid and vehicle to home technologies, also from the automotive sector, that you need to be aware of. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, as I said, housing, EVs, hubs, it will be an increase in demand for clean energy. Our grids are to the max of the capacity and are really a chokehold on rapid development of new homes. So we need to combine those. That supposes the availability of a lot of data. I think that we can do that in the ecosystem, providing all participants with a trustworthy and predictive way of exchanging data or even making available data to other parties. And as I've tried to show, it's on a local and a regional and a national level. It is both the individual and the collective, because you see that you see the first examples of energy corporations, both private citizens as a group, but also companies in different locations in the Netherlands. So that's a big step up. But what we really want to use AI for is load balancing, the peak shaving. We did a previous project with 4,000 EV owners. And just by giving them information on the way that they can program their own vehicle charging later in the evening or even during the night, 30% of all owners immediately adjusted their behavior. And that was a major benefit of not increasing the peak in charging at the moment they all came home, usually 6 in the evening, charging their vehicle. I think that we really need to take a hard look at the regulatory framework. So that's something that is both for municipalities as well as national authorities on the agenda. And within that ecosystem, we'll come up with a host of new data agreements, really standardizing the agreements and also making it very much trustworthy on a legal uniform basis. I think that in that ecosystem, we all feel the urgency to move forward. We also are very much aware that we all have our individual responsibilities, but also share a common goal, both strategizing and also being very practical and hands-on, delivering this year, the next year, and over the next 10 years. And I would really very much invite you all to share your knowledge, your experiences, your capabilities, your examples, your best practices, because I think that also on an international level, we should intensify our cooperation and collaboration, because individually, we may come a long way, but if we help each other, we can really accelerate. So next slide, please. If you're willing to do
Casper,
so.
I'm going to give you about a minute before I ask you to wrap up.
That's all I need. Next slide, please. That's the final one. So if you're willing to share your knowledge and experiences, please check in on our website and or contact us via this email address. And we would really like to get into a conversation as to how we can help each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Casper. It's really great to hear how you started out with this landscaping of so many different pilot projects, and then how do we actually get beyond that? And a big part of it is being able to take this take a step back and have an integrated perspective and look at these different scales and finding policy coordination. So thank you very much for bringing that to the table. We're going to move into our panel discussion portion. So I will invite our audience who is joining us. If you have any questions for our speakers, feel free to either raise your hand or to put them in the chat. I will invite our panelists to turn on your camera so we can have a feeling of a remote virtual panel. And I have a couple of questions for you. First as a round, but I think also the presentations have been incredibly rich, and there's some interesting connections across the panelists, which I found really interesting. But before we get there, the first question I will have for all of you is, I hear a recurring theme about coordination, collaboration, working together with different people, organizations, different scales. And this is the type of challenge that the Smart City Marketplace is really well posed to support and to enable this kind of collaboration. So I was wondering if you could share from your experience one or two main challenges that you had to overcome in this work, and how did you do that? Some of you have already alluded to some of these challenges in your presentations, be it on a technical level or on the interoperability, but I will invite your storytelling. Let's start with Bart, the brave
Sure,
one
yeah.
who raised his hand. Go for it.
I accidentally raised my hand, but it's a nice question. I think one of the topics we ran into, and that is probably not uncommon if you start working with, let's say, a radical new approach of the way you work, which a digital twin is for many cities, is that at first you need a lot of energy to convince people that this is really contributing to, what they're doing. If you start talking to people, and this is also a matter of learning how to, let's say, to present and how to speak about what you're offering and what you're sharing. At first, the first reaction is very often, why do we need anything like this? Because did we do everything wrong in the past? And of course, the answer is no. But it will actually help you in doing your work more efficiently. And what was interesting is after working with the city, because eventually they overcame, and many the cities we work with overcame these questions. You find benefits of the solution that you're deploying, which are totally not expected. So one of the examples is we spoke to people in the city of Amsterdam that were really surprised how using an advanced tool like Urban Strategy was actually helping them in the communication with their aldermen, with city council. Before, it was complicated to get their message across and have that communication in an efficient and concise way. And just by using this different approach and this different technology, they found out that the link with the people that are important to them was actually getting shorter, which was totally unexpected to us as well. It was a very nice way of actually, jointly discovering how technology can actually change the way people work.
Thank you for that, Bart. It's what I hear is that while it's a highly technical solution, it's also really about facilitating communication.
Absolutely, that's key. That's key. It's not about technology. It's about the way people work together.
Just to add on that, and I think that also my experience, you need to see it, you need to use it, you need to sample it to really understand what the possibilities can be for you, your questions, your problems, your ambitions. And it is an intense process. I've never met anyone who said, no, I don't want to collaborate. They all say, yeah, of course I do. But then, organizing a collaboration, it is an intense process. It takes time. You're probably, depending on the scale and your ambition, 1 to 2 to 3 years preparing for that, really getting a feel for all the other entities. Do they look at the same things? Do they have the same ambition, the same urgency? Do they prioritize the same goals? And also there is a bit of a downside, at least the initial reaction might be not wholly positive, because if you're feeling comfortable with, performing one pilot, you have that complete control and independence within a city, a small group of people, one supplier, and that's it. That's a very comfortable position to be in, being independent. Collaboration also means that you need to structure and maybe even confirm, or certainly conform to standards, practices, semantics, certain rules that apply. maybe even legal. So that's an entirely new level of complexity that people need to become accustomed to. But once they've seen the digital twinning of urban strategy and the predictive possibilities, they say, okay, well, this is something that's worth my while. So you need to invest time and effort in that.
Investing time and effort for meaningful, genuine collaboration, going beyond what everybody's like, yes, of course we want to collaborate. Yes. Well, there's many places that I could jump off onto that, but I'd invite Michael, please.
Sure. Well, let's focus a little bit more about, in a way, the kind of collaboration around data sharing, because that's, in a way, you know, the whole point of this is we know that AI can do an enormous amount to make cities work better, but it needs good data to do that, and that data is held by many different agencies. And why on earth should they share data together? One interesting project that I was involved in was funded to develop sandboxes to help data sharing ecosystems. So the idea is, you know, the idea we went into it was about technical sandboxing to see how to deal with technical issues that prevented data sharing. But we very soon found out that wasn't the main problem. The main problem was organizational, if you like. It was the organizations that the city wanted to join the ecosystem. They had worries. And as we talked to them, it was things like, what about the security of the data if we share it? How about if, for instance, personal data that we've collected and we're managing carefully according to GDPR, if we share it, maybe we'll find ourselves that that's not used properly, and we become open to you know, criminal charges, or you know, legal challenges. What about commercial data that might accidentally leak out to competitors? So you know, there was some very real worries that people had that prevented them doing it. And then, of course, what is the motivation? Why should we? What value can we get out of it? And so we developed some with some of our partners. We developed some processes to help do, if you like, organizational sandboxing, where if you wanted to set up a real data sharing, a collaborative system, where you systematically, first of all, systematically do your best to identify what the challenges might be, and then you actually run, you know, you meet, you interview, you run maybe workshops to really try and make sure you've understood what the barriers really were, the organizational barriers, and then you could find ways to help allay those concerns. Think SLAs and another issue. I mean, if I join a data sharing ecosystem and I say, great, I can use data to develop some new application, and then suddenly the person sharing that data stops, or the data, which originally was a high quality, it becomes out of date or not so good. And so lots of issues like that need to be, it's really about understanding what's preventing and what might motivate that. And then just one other thing, I think data spaces are amazing. I mean, Casper's kind of really talked about this in a way. The two things about it is it's not, I'm not giving my data into some big data lake and don't know what's happening to it. I continued as an organization, I continue to own my data, manage my data, but I can give permission under proper governance rules to other people to be able to use it. And so I feel much more in control of my data because of that. But I think even more important, whereas in the past, I think it was cities that would sort of recognize that there's great value in sharing between different organizations, and we're trying desperately to get lots of data from many different areas of the city life to help manage the city better. In data spaces, you have existing ecosystems of organizations that are collaborating to deliver something together, you know, transport or energy or health or something like that. And so you've got organizations that already are working closely with common with lots of commonalities, common aims, common objectives, and it becomes much easier to make the case. It's almost too obvious why, if they share data much better between themselves, it would help all of them. And so I think the focus actually on data spaces is where what you're doing is not saying, hey, join my little club. We don't know quite why, but just join it. But you look at organizations that are already collaborating, and needing to make sure that the market or the service they're offering works well. Great. How can we help you learn much better by sharing that information so that you can all get value out of it? So those are the two things I'd say.
Thank you, Michael. There's already a lot of like rich crossover between the presentations. And I hear a lot about how do we build a common perspective and allow different people to see, but with the infrastructure of federated the data collectives or data spaces, how do we support this? I would like to give Bart an opportunity to jump in. Would you like to, have you had a moment to reflect on perhaps some...
Yeah, if the question is how I can ideally collaborate, of course, I'm not, let's say, involved in this world since a long time. It's more than just a little bit more over a year. The way we work here in Flanders is we had maybe a little bit of a dispersed model. You have the VLAIO, as I mentioned, the Agency for Innovation, and then you have the Agency for Domestic Administration, and then there's Digital Vlaanderen, Digital Flanders in English. What they did is they combined, let's say, their 3 different people representing these organizations. It's called the SRO, standing for Smart Region Office. And they make sure that, for example, when it comes to data spaces, they push that back to the local governments. That's one thing they do. They also try to make connections with companies, and they are definitely, from my point of view, the glue holding everything together. So they make sure there is funding, like the project that I'm talking about, there is funding foreseen. And if this project is then, let's say, succeeding, because a lot of these projects, when the funding stops, the project stops, let's say, but the projects that succeed, they pick them up again, and they then try to have a plan for rolling it out on a broader perspective again. So they are really the glue. That's what I see is happening today. They also have a sandbox, for example. They have an AI competence center that's all organized on, let's say, a Flemish level from a government perspective. So yes, I think that's how we try to achieve things, with a lot of challenges, of course. But definitely when it comes to best practices, it's quite complex. If you talk about an open city architectures, or the Oslo semantic interoperability, or the data spaces, that is quite challenging to make sure that all the local governments, that they understand what is going on. That is also a challenge as such, I believe. So they play a role in that. And we also, as an intermediate organization, of course. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. I have one more question for all of you, but before I do, I was wondering if any of you, our panelists, had a question for one another, because often you don't get a chance. So I wanted to say, if you have a question, now is your chance. Otherwise, I will pose my second. Okay. Well, then I will. One of the things that I hear a lot from the different presentations is the different levels of scale, and keeping in mind that the Smart Cities Marketplace is also a European Commission project, and that's really the context under which we meet today. I was wondering if you have a thought on how the EU is contributing to creating an enabling environment for unlocking the potential of using AI in decarbonization and energy initiatives for the climate crisis. Is that something that you have a connection with? Michael.
Yeah, so it's a sort of a good and a bad. I mean, I think the great thing that the Commission does is all the projects that are funded, because it's like a thousand flowers bloom, and they're encouraging that, they're watering, they're fertilizing, they're providing seeds, they're doing all sorts of things to encourage people to experiment. And I mentioned just briefly two, for instance, positive energy district projects. That there are others obviously out there, but we know a bit more about those because we're involved heavily in them. And they're both very much about using digital twins and analytics and modeling to help manage that district effectively to ensure net move towards net zero and so on. And that's fantastic. You've got these different projects that are working hard, using great creativity to come up with solutions that will provide real impact. So I think that's fantastic. It's this thousand flowers bloom thing. What the Commission needs to do better, I think, is a couple of things. One is, Casper's mentioned standards, and I think that they're doing their best, because there's HS Booster, which is doing its best now to provide support to projects around use of standards. But I think it's a really fundamental thing that the more you can get projects using agreed standards, the more you can align the results that allow projects that work well in one city to be easily ported to another city that's based on using the same standard. So I think that's one thing. I think an even greater focus on consistency in the approach. And I think the other thing is that what often happens is you have a project and it provides some fantastic results. Now, the benefit to the city continues, but some of those results are sort of tools and good practice documents and so on, and they may be left as a deliverable on some website somewhere, along with many other deliverables, and you don't know which deliverable actually is practical tools and which is just reports of things that were done, and how do you find you, and is there anything, or it's left and after a couple of years the website disappears and you can no longer get value from it. So I think that there needs to be more thought in helping to preserve all this good practice that's done and encourage much wider use. And that's obviously with the marketplace. I mean, that's really one of the things that you're trying to do. It's to identify where there has been a genuine, real result and capture it in a way that makes it easy for others to find out about it and to see the relevance to them. So that's where they should give you even more funding and support your work even more.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that, Michael. It's also a nice transition, because indeed the Smart Cities Marketplace, we don't really focus on cutting edge technologies. We really are looking at something that is replicable, bankable, works on real implementation that has for more impact, really. And I think the point you raise about standards is one of the areas that we can really support with advisory, targeted advisory and knowledge sharing. My last question for our illustrious panel is, in our audience, we have a lot of cities, city representatives from all over the world, also beyond Europe. And if you, based on your experience, if you had to give one or two suggestions to people who are looking, cities and businesses who are looking to invest in the transition of their energy systems, what should they prioritize, and what would your advice be? Nice and broad, but because you have this opportunity to speak directly to city representatives, I would like you to make the most of it. Casper.
Just a basic advice. Don't try to reinvent the wheel on your own. Look around, use your context, use the networks available. Maybe what you want to do or the problem that you want to solve has already more than one solution that you can adapt to. Use the knowledge, and Michael said something about websites going defunct, the instruments already being there. Try to do that first. And if you cannot find anything at all, then maybe you should get your hands dirty yourself, but do that initial step first. That will be my recommendation.
Bart, please.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry,
so-
Bart. Go ahead.
So tagging onto that, I would say try to tag onto existing initiatives, and there's so many initiatives going on. I mean, Casper has meant, giving kind of nice overview of what we're trying to do in the Netherlands and how this is approached. I mean, not from a small perspective, but really opening up the system and building an ecosystem. I think that way of thinking can be very inspirational for many cities. And my personal recommendation would be, which is also kind of in line with, I think, the ecosystem thinking, is try not to look at one single domain and try to solve your problems in that single domain, because problems are typically multi-domain, which makes them more complex. But actually, the kind of solutions that we're talking about today are exactly addressing that topic. So there's much more than a lot of cities are aware, and actually, and a lot more is happening already in terms of projects that they can kind of tag on to and learn from.
I'll give the floor to Bart. You wanted to speak?
Yeah, I totally agree with the rest of the panel. So look around, look all over the world what exists and try to improve that a little bit, or just try to implement it in your own region. That's definitely the first thing. Focus on the business case, of course, but I guess investors are doing that. Of course, that's in essence what they do. And also what I would say is a focus on energy and energy management systems. I think at a certain point now, we had the price increase of electricity in Europe when the war started between Ukraine and Russia, but it will happen again. The price will increase. We are now a little bit in a sort of a momentum that has disappeared, I have the feeling, but when the price goes up again, then we need to be ready with a lot of systems that can cope with that. And Michael mentioned the positive energy districts, so that will definitely play a big part, I guess, in the future.
Thank you, Bart. Last but not least, Michael.
Yes, so I think one thing that the Commission has done, of course, is there's the Net Zero Cities initiative, and that's putting together a huge amount of very important practical information that they're gaining from cities as they work with cities and learning what works and what doesn't, providing good practice examples and things like that about, if you like, the energy transition. And I think more generally, the fact that learn from other cities, there are city networks around, and almost every member state, I'm sure, if not every member state, will have some kind of city network, and that's a great way of collaborating with other cities to tackle common problems, learning how they've done it, sharing how you've done it, and that's really important. We're very lucky in Open and Agile Smart Cities. We're part now of I mean, we're living in the EU is really good. As a great initiative there to bring together cities around Europe to look at digital transformation in general, but that obviously can be taken more widely. But we're very lucky because we're part of a EU-funded thing, which is pulling together smart city networks around the EU to help with sharing around digital transformation, local digital twins, and so on in particular. And that's something that's really going to be another added resource, because what that's going to help to do is another way of linking together existing networks of cities in different countries so you can learn from each other. Some countries like the Netherlands regions like Flanders are really advanced in some of these areas. Others have cities which are still, pretty well every city is still very much at the first stage in moving forward, and it's really good to have the chance for cities and countries where there's not very many good examples, if we can really help share those collaboration with countries where there are cities that have more experience in these issues.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's a lovely way to wrap up this session, to focus on the importance of city networks and knowledge sharing. And this is partly the kind of work that the Smart Cities Marketplace does, is really bring together how can, peer groups. In our case, in the Smart Cities Marketplace, we're also doing exchanges with investors, but it is really about how can we learn when we look around, as Bart and Ward said. What can we learn, and how can we build from what's already existing? So with that, we've come to the end of our session. So I'd like to thank Casper, Michael, Ward, and Bart very much. It's been a really interesting panel. We're ending a little earlier than planned, but I'm quite happy to give everybody another 20 minutes back of your afternoon. For all of our audience members, the session has been recorded, so we will share it shortly. And if there's any last comments from the panelists?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a delight. Thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon, and we look forward to the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.